Picture this. You're 60 years old. You open your banking app, and the number staring back at you is not a retirement fund. It's just your checking account running low like it always does at the end of the month. No 401k balance to speak of. No investment portfolio. Just a roof over your head, a car payment, and a quiet kind of dread that you don't talk about at dinner. I used to think people in this situation had simply not tried hard enough, that it was a discipline problem, a planning problem. I was wrong about that. After working with hundreds of families over the years, I started seeing the real pattern. It wasn't laziness. It was a divorce at 52 that split everything down the middle. It was a medical event that wiped out 3 years of savings in 8 months. It was the years when you were the only one holding the household together, paying tuition, covering your parents' prescriptions, keeping the lights on. You were doing everything right for everyone else. The retirement account just kept getting pushed to next year. According to the Federal Reserve, 1 in 4 Americans reaches retirement age with no savings at all. None. That's not a fringe group. That's a quarter of the country. So when you're sitting there at 60, the advice you get from financial media is almost always the same. Just work a few more years. Pick up some part-time hours. Simple, sensible, and for a lot of people in this room, completely useless. Because what they don't mention is what happens when you send out 50 applications and your inbox stays quiet. Not because your skills are outdated, but because the system is quietly, consistently filtering you out. If you stay in that panic and shame loop, the one where you just don't look at the numbers, you will likely run out of cash somewhere around 63. But if you're willing to look at this clearly, right now, you actually have something most people don't think they have at 60. You have time. Not a lot of it, but enough. 7 years to be specific to build something that works. That's what this video is about. Not generic advice. A specific plan for the gap years no one talks about. Before we talk about making more money, we need to talk about the bleeding. Because here's what I see happen with people who come to me at 60 with no savings. They immediately start looking for ways to earn more. A side gig, a second job, something. And that instinct makes sense. But if you've got a slow leak in the hull, rowing harder doesn't keep the boat afloat. The first move is not a fence, it's stopping the bleed. I call this the reality audit, 30 days. Every dollar that comes in, every dollar that goes out. No estimates, no guessing. You track it. Because you cannot manage what you cannot measure. And most people are shocked by what they find when they actually look. I sat down with a client not long ago. She's in her early 60s, decent income, genuinely stressed about retirement. We went through her monthly statements together. She was paying for 4 streaming subscriptions she'd signed up for over the years and forgotten about. 2 gym memberships, one she'd used twice. A cloud storage plan she didn't know she had. 15 minutes of work. Nearly $1,500 back in her pocket every year. Her lifestyle didn't change by a single meal, but her runway got longer. That kind of thing shows up more often than people expect. Now here's why this matters beyond just the obvious. Cutting expenses isn't just cutting expenses. Every dollar you permanently remove from your monthly spending actually reduces the amount you need to have saved in order to retire. There's a framework called the 4% rule. It says you need roughly 25 times your annual expenses in your portfolio to sustain retirement. So run this math with me. If you cut $500 a month in fixed costs, that's $6,000 a year. You have just reduced your retirement number by $150,000. That's $6,000 multiplied by 25. You didn't earn that $150,000. You didn't invest it. You simply stopped spending it. That's the boomerang. The cut comes back to you at 25 times its value. Look around your life for the obvious targets. The second car sitting in the driveway that costs you $180 a month in insurance alone, plus registration, plus the occasional repair. The house that's now 3 bedrooms too large, with property taxes eating into your monthly cash flow. These feel like identity decisions, not financial ones. That's exactly why people avoid them. But holding onto a car you don't really drive isn't protecting your quality of life. It's protecting a story about what your life looks like. And that story has a price tag you might not be able to afford right now. Downsizing a home, selling a vehicle, cutting the subscriptions that quietly renew every month, none of this is failure. It's resource reallocation. You're moving money from things that don't serve you toward the years that matter most. If you skip this step and go straight to trying to earn your way out of the gap, the math gets brutal. The pressure to generate income will compound every month, and most people crack under it before they ever build anything sustainable. Stop the bleed first. Then, once your monthly burn rate is under control, you have something to work with. You have breathing room. And you have a much clearer picture of exactly how much bridge income you actually need to build. Cutting spending is how you survive. But surviving isn't the goal. The goal is making it from 60 to the other side of this gap without having to make a permanent decision in a moment of panic. That's the next piece. Let's talk about the math that the government actually built for you. Because there is a system designed to protect you in retirement. You've been paying into it your entire working life. The question is whether you use it well or burn it early out of desperation. Here's how it works. Social Security has what's called a full retirement age, the age at which you collect your full monthly benefit. For anyone born in 1966, which means you're turning 60 this year, that age is 67. That's the baseline. That's what you're owed if you wait. But you can claim as early as 62. And a lot of people do because they need the money now. Here's what that decision actually costs you. If you claim at 62 instead of 67, your monthly benefit gets permanently reduced by roughly 30%. Not temporarily. Not until you turn 67 and it resets. Permanently. For the rest of your life. If your full benefit would have been $2,000 a month, early claiming drops that to around $1,400 every single month for 20 or 30 years. And if you can wait past 67 all the way to 70, your benefit grows by about 8% for every year you delay. That means waiting from 67 to 70 adds roughly 24% more to your monthly check. A $2,000 benefit becomes closer to $2,480. That difference, compounded over a long retirement, is not a rounding error. So the math is clear. Wait as long as you possibly can. But here's where it gets painful. You're 60. Your full benefit kicks in at 67. That's a 7-year window where you need to cover your living expenses without touching Social Security and, in most cases, without a full-time salary either. That window has a name. I call it the gap years. And it is the part of this plan that breaks people. Not because they don't understand the math. Most people understand it fine. But understanding something and being able to live through it are two different things. When the gap years arrive and the bills don't stop, the temptation to claim Social Security early feels less like a financial decision and more like survival. You tell yourself you'll figure out the rest later. And just like that, you've locked in a lower income floor for the next 25 years. This is the trap. Not ignorance, timing pressure. One more thing worth saying clearly, because I think it needs to be said. Not having savings at 60 does not define your worth. It does not mean you were irresponsible or short-sighted. Life is expensive and it is long, and most financial planning advice was written for people who never had a medical crisis, a family obligation, or a decade where every dollar was already spoken for. Stop carrying that as a moral failure. It is not. What matters now is the decision in front of you. And the single most important financial decision you can make right now is to protect your Social Security benefit by not touching it early. Delay to 67 if you can. Delay to 70 if you can manage it. Every year you wait is locking in a higher income floor that no market crash can touch, no employer can take away, and no sequence of bad luck can eliminate. The question, of course, is what you live on while you wait. That's a fair question. And the answer is not find a part-time job at a company that would rather hire someone half your age. There's a better way to think about this, and it starts with understanding why the standard advice keeps failing people in exactly your situation. So the standard advice is to work longer, keep earning, bridge the gap with a paycheck. And on paper, that makes sense. In real life, it runs into something the financial planning industry doesn't like to talk about. I want to tell you about a guy I know, 61 years old, former supply chain director, 30 years managing contracts worth millions of dollars, vendor negotiations, logistics networks, cross-border compliance, the kind of experience that takes decades to build and cannot be faked. When his company restructured, he did what everyone told him to do. He updated his resume. He got on Indeed. He applied to 70 positions, mid-level management roles, nothing he was overqualified for. He waited. He got 0 interviews. Not a few. 0, so he started applying lower. Operations coordinator, logistics assistant, roles that paid a fraction of what he used to earn. Still nothing. By month 4, he was seriously considering cashier positions at the grocery store 2 miles from his house. A man with 3 decades of high-level experience, quietly preparing to ask for a job that pays minimum wage because the system had stopped seeing him. That is not a personal failure. That is a structural one. Here is what's actually happening inside most large hiring systems. Applicant tracking software, the automated filters that screen resumes before any human ever reads them, are optimized for speed and pattern matching. They flag graduation years. They assess career gaps. They deprioritize candidates whose work history suggests higher healthcare costs or shorter expected tenure. Nobody programmed them to discriminate. But the output is discrimination quietly and at scale. And even when a resume does get through, it often lands on the desk of a hiring manager in their 30s who has never managed someone older than themselves and doesn't know how to. The discomfort is real, even when the bias is unconscious. I used to tell clients to work around this. Scrub the graduation year off your resume. Reframe your experience to sound more current. Present yourself as adaptable. I gave that advice for years. I was wrong. Trying to disguise your age inside a system that is structurally built to filter you out is not a strategy. It is an exhausting performance with a low success rate. And every rejection that comes back, even when it has nothing to do with your ability, lands like a verdict on your worth. That cycle is what breaks people before they ever find a solution. The energy you spend trying to compete inside a game rigged against you is energy you are not spending building something that actually works in your favor. Because here is what those hiring systems cannot filter out. They cannot filter out a business owner. They cannot filter out a consultant who comes recommended. They cannot filter out someone who shows up not as an applicant, but as a solution. You do not need to convince a 32-year-old HR manager that you are still relevant. You need to find the people who already know they have a problem you can solve. That is a completely different game, And it is one where 30 years of hard-won experience is not a liability. It is the entire product. So let's go back to the supply chain director. After 4 months of rejections, he stopped applying for jobs, not because he gave up, because he reframed the question. Instead of asking, "Who will hire me?" he started asking, "Who has a problem I already know how to fix?" He built a simple consulting profile on Upwork. No headshot optimized for youth. No carefully worded summary trying to hide 30 years of experience. Just a straightforward description of what he does. Supply chain consulting for small and mid-sized businesses, inventory bottlenecks, vendor contracts, logistics audits. Within 6 weeks, 3 companies had hired him. Not full-time, project-based, 10 hours a week each, more or less. He was generating $2,500 a month without a single HR interview, without a single applicant tracking system, and without asking anyone's permission. That is the invisible job. Not invisible because it hides anything. Invisible because it bypasses the entire traditional hiring structure that was filtering him out. On a B2 billion platform, nobody is looking at your graduation year. Nobody is calculating your expected healthcare costs. A small business owner who needs their books cleaned up, their vendor contracts renegotiated, or their customer service process rebuilt. They are looking at one thing. Can you solve my problem? And at 60, with 3 decades of real experience behind you, the answer is almost certainly yes. I've seen this work across a wide range of backgrounds: accountants, project managers, HR professionals, technical writers, customer service directors, people who spent careers inside large organizations solving expensive problems and never thought of that knowledge as something they could sell independently. It is. The market for it is real, and it is largely untapped by people in your age group, which means the competition is lower than you think. Here is the math on what you actually need. To generate $2,000 a month in bridge income, you need $500 a week. That's it. If your skills are worth $50 an hour on the open market, and for most with 20 or 30 years of specialized experience, that is a conservative number. You need 10 hours of paid work per week. If you're starting out and pricing lower, say $25 an hour, you need 20 hours. Either way, you are not rebuilding a full-time career. You are filling a specific gap for a specific number of years with a specific income target in mind. $2,000 a month keeps you from touching Social Security early. It keeps the audit savings intact. It gives you a floor to stand on while your delayed benefit grows in the background. When I started taking on independent consulting projects outside my main work, I noticed something that surprised me. The B2 billion world is genuinely hungry for people who have actually done the thing. Not people who have studied it, not people with fresh credentials, but people who have made the mistakes, absorbed the lessons, and can shortcut the learning curve for someone else. The 30 years of experience you might be tempted to downplay on a resume is exactly what a small business owner will pay for. They are trying to avoid the errors you already survived. That shift in framing changes everything. You are not a job seeker competing with younger candidates. You are a specialist with a track record, offering a defined service to clients who need it. The transition from employee to consultant is not complicated, but it does require a different starting point than most people expect. You do not begin by building a website or setting up an LLC. You begin by identifying the one skill from your career that created the most measurable value, the thing you were genuinely good at, that cost real money when it went wrong, and that other businesses would pay to get right. Then you package it simply. A clear description of what you do, who you do it for, and what problem it solves. That goes on a platform where buyers are already looking. Upwork for project-based work. LinkedIn for direct outreach to small business owners. Expert networks like GLG or Catalant if your background is more senior and specialized. You are not asking for a job, you are offering a solution. That distinction is not semantic. It changes how you show up, how you price yourself, and how clients respond to you. This is not a magic formula. It takes a few weeks to set up and a few more to get traction, but it is a strategy that works specifically because of your age, not in spite of it. Nobody can fire you for being too experienced. So let's bring this together. You are 60. You have a gap to bridge. And you now have 3 concrete moves that actually work together as a system. The first move is the reality audit. 30 days. Track every dollar in and every dollar out. No estimates. Pull up your bank statements, your credit card statements, and go line by line. Look for the subscriptions you forgot about, the insurance policies you haven't reviewed in years, the second car that costs more to keep than it's worth. Cut what does not serve you. Every $500 you remove from your monthly expenses permanently reduces your retirement number by $150,000. That is not a motivational statement. That is arithmetic. The second move is to protect your Social Security benefit. Write down your full retirement age. For most people watching this, that is 67. Make that number your anchor. Every year you delay past 62 puts more money in your monthly check for the rest of your life. Claiming early because you are scared is one of the most expensive decisions you can make at this stage, not just for next year, but for your 80s. If there is one thing worth being stubborn about right now, it is this. The third move is to start the invisible job. Sit down this week and write one sentence. What is the single most valuable skill from your working life? And what does it cost a business when that thing goes wrong? That sentence is the beginning of your consulting offer. Take it to Upwork, to LinkedIn, to whatever network makes sense for your background. You do not need a website. You do not need a business plan. You need one client and 10 hours a week. The goal is $2,000 a month in bridge income, enough to live on without touching your Social Security benefit before it's fully grown. These 3 things are not complicated. None of them require a financial advisor, a career coach, or a significant upfront investment. They require clarity and the willingness to look at your situation honestly. A smaller, simpler life with a clear plan underneath it carries more peace than a larger life held together by avoidance. I have watched enough people go through these years to believe that completely. If you found this useful and you want more retirement planning that skips the generic advice and gets into the actual mechanics, subscribe. That is what this channel is built for. You may have started late. The path forward is not easy, and I am not going to tell you otherwise. But you have more to work with than you think. You have skills that took decades to build. You have the ability to cut your costs deliberately and protect your benefits strategically. And you have a way to generate income that does not require you to compete in a system designed to overlook you. Control your spending, protect your benefit, sell what you already know. That is the plan. See you in the next one.